So we're here with the Minister for Justice and Home Affairs, Poole-Wilson MHK, and the Chief Executive of the Department of Home Affairs, Davies. Hello.
Hello. Hi.
So the process started for the appointment of a new Chief Constable. So just what can you tell us about how that actually works, first of all?
Okay, well, I mean, maybe people will have seen that an advert has gone out to advertise for candidates to come forward. Obviously, there was an initial closing date of the 16th of January, but we've extended that in recognition of the Christmas period, and also obviously some of the challenges around the recent COVID outbreak. And then once the applications have come in, there will be a shortlisting process, as you might expect. And then crucially, there will be a very important assessment centre, as this is a significant role, an important role for the island.
So what sort of person is it that you're looking for besides just obviously a police officer?
It is a unique role for our island. In this role, you are responsible for all aspects of policing on the island. And although we don't have a huge population, the truth is that we are dealing with the same types of issues as much larger areas of England and Wales, Scotland and so on. So you have to be someone who can, with fairly limited resources, I mean under 260 uniformed officers on the Isle of Man, deal with everything from economic and financial crime, through to neighbourhood policing, through to public protection, through to some of our emerging challenges around serious and organised crime and drugs and so on. So it's a very, very broad portfolio, and critical that we have someone who can step up to the challenges of that scope of policing in this jurisdiction.
Obviously when Gary Roberts took the job about 10 years ago there, thereabouts, it was a very different time for the police on the island. They were having severe cuts in their budgets and stations were being closed. And do you feel that moving forward though, that the person coming in has perhaps a lot more opportunity than he possibly did at the start to come in and shape how they want to shape the force?
I think, and I can't speak for our current Chief Constable, but I think, if you look at his reports over the years, the challenges and the role, I suppose, evolves to reflect the demands and the emerging threats and so on that come forward. So there's no question that it will always be a challenging position because, as I say, that we don't have bottomless resources, and there are a range of challenges and policing areas that we will have to meet. We are the safest place to live in the British Isles, and I think to maintain that is critical, but also to see what we can do as well to mitigate against the future threats and challenges we may face.
And demand is increasing.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more complexity in the issues that the modern police have to deal with. And if you think about new legislation that's being introduced, so the domestic abuse legislation will give a range of new powers to police officers to deal with domestic abuse in the community, but also the sexual offences and obscene publications legislation is updated. That legislation will be introduced, parts of it certainly towards the end of this year, and that means a greater range of sexual offences, particularly complex offences against children, for example, and internet-based digital offences will be introduced. And so, although the police are certainly in a far better position than they were in terms of budget, demand is increasing and complexity is increasing all the time.
Yeah.
Also, we said about how it's a bit of a unique place to be Chief Constable in the sense that in, say, the UK, it's a position. Here it's a position as well, but you're also a part of the community in much more of a sense that people will know who you are. Does that factor into the sort of places of people that you're looking to bring in from, or even appoint from on island?
I think absolutely the role is open to candidates on island as well as off island, provided they meet the criteria. I think you're absolutely right, Sam, that part of the role here is to, particularly if you're from off island, is to understand our community and understand what a critical role you have in the community on the island. I think another part of that is the interface with politicians, the scrutiny aspect and so on, and being able to understand how to interface with the community and the political realm around, helping politicians and everyone understand some of these emerging challenges, and how in a jurisdiction like this we can best formulate policy and approach to address them, particularly where that extends out with the police remit. So Dan touched on domestic abuse. I mean, the reality of that really difficult and concerning area of problem for our citizens is, yes, in part it's a policing and a criminal matter. in part it's a wider societal matter, and it requires more than just a policing response, albeit that is important. So it's very cross-cutting. It's very, very important. I think that our next Chief Constable understands what a critical role they have in terms of the engagement with the community and politically.
And I think there needs to be an expectation from any candidate that they will be much more visible in the community, because, as you said, we're a small island, and they need to expect that. So somebody who does have experience of a small island jurisdiction will understand that. But that we absolutely, I don't think, are limiting candidates on that basis at all, but it would be helpful. But at the same time, I think it is a really different environment, a really rewarding environment actually, in which to carry out policing.
Just sort of finally, when can we expect to see sort of the new chief being named? Is that towards the end of the year? Are we looking in the summer, or?
Probably towards the end of the year, I would imagine. We're hoping that we'll have somebody in place before the TT, but not actually in post, but named. And we would certainly encourage any candidate to come here, even if they're not in post yet, to experience and observe the TT, because again, one of the unique roles of the constabulary here is to police upwards of 30,000 people come into the island to ride their bikes, to watch the TT, to have a good time, and it's a really unique policing operation that's done with really small numbers considering the size of the crowd. So but certainly the current Chief Constable retires on the 31st of December this year, so we hope to have somebody in place probably towards the end of the year to allow a bit of a handover before the current chief retires.
That's great, thank you.
And Sam, sorry, can I close by actually saying, Gary obviously is still in post, but I think it would be remiss not to say that, we recognise and thank him very much for his considerable service to the island, and actually, he is the first Manx Chief Constable, and I think we should acknowledge that too.
Absolutely.